on this can be. Okay, so Imran, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Imran, and I'm the CEO and founder of Bipolar Lift, an organization that I set up back in 2019 to support people with bipolar disorder and to also help them and their friends and families cope with the illness and manage their condition better. We support people in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. We've kind of expanded into Leicestershire as well now. And we provide one-to-one support, group support sessions, and we take people out and about and help them in whichever way they need help with. So yeah, we do pretty much anything that a bipolar person needs help with.
That's amazing, wonderful. Nahida, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Nahida, Imran's wife. I work alongside with him. I'm the wellbeing manager, and I've been a social worker for about 25 odd years. So I help with all the practical things, the debt problems, PIP, appeals, one-to-ones, and general support.
That's amazing. I mean, it's wonderful to have a supportive partner, Imran. And I know that from having my other half supporting me with this work, especially when we ourselves struggle with our own mental health problems, and
Absolutely.
things can get quite overwhelming sometimes. So having
Absolutely.
a partner that's supportive of your work, but also gets you, is so important. So Nahida, that's wonderful that you're able to support Imran, just as I'm truly blessed as well. Now, the way we're going to do today's session for our listeners is that we are mainly going to be focusing on speaking and hearing from Imran and Nahida and your experiences and learning from you. I think because it's a short session, I would suggest anybody who has questions, we will try our best to answer them if you put them in the chat. And then as we're having the conversations, I will try and make sure Ismail's looking in the chat and making sure that we present those questions in a timely manner. So Imran, first of all, yeah, we've, kind of heard of it. Most of us have heard of bipolar, but we don't really know what that means. So I'd love for you to maybe explain a little bit, what is bipolar disorder?
Well, it used to be called manic depression years ago, and
Yes.
bipolar disorder is a condition where you have extreme mood swings. And I know people think about mood swings as in high and low, and that's it. But these are very extreme. These are extreme as in high to very high, to a point where you're kind of psychotic, or to a point where you don't realize what you're doing. That kind of high. And then you have the lows, which are extremely depressive lows, where you're at a point where you're thinking about committing suicide and things like that. So the two extremes are very, very extreme, and you can dip from one end to the other very quickly, or sometimes it can take weeks. Sometimes you could be high for weeks, and sometimes you could be low for weeks. And there are times when you could be stable, so you could be managing the illness quite well. But the problem with bipolar is it's a lifelong condition that hasn't got a cure. It can only be managed, and it can only be managed through medication. So you have things like lithium and sodium valproate, mood stabilizers that can manage the mood, so you can manage the mood better, so you're not going too high or too low at any one time. There's different types of bipolar. There's bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. Now, bipolar 1 is where you have more highs than you have lows, and bipolar 2 is where you have more low episodes than highs. But the problem with bipolar is, and one of the things that they're still investigating at the moment and researching, is how it's possible to have mixed episodes at the same time. So you can be high and low at the same time. And that's where, when people, bipolar has one of the highest rates of suicide in any mental health condition. And that's normally because people are experiencing a mixed episode where they have all of the energy and the energy and the highs of the manic side of things, but they also have the depression and the low of the lowest low at the same time. And when you have that mixed together, that's when they've got the energy to carry out whatever they want to do. So that's where the danger is. So bipolar is it's a very dangerous illness. It's classed as a serious mental illness, on par with schizophrenia and borderline personality disorder. So it's a very serious condition, and people need to take it seriously, because I think sometimes people think, oh, somebody's a bit high and somebody's a bit low, or they're just feeling depressed, or they're feeling suicidal, so they must just be having some personal issues or something like that. And I think, you know, it needs to be looked into a little more deeper to understand that person and what they're going through, and whether or not they've had other episodes or similar experiences, which can be looked into to see whether or not it is bipolar or not.
Thank you for that really, informative explanation. And I know that you and I are planning some workshops in the city where you're going to do a specific focus on bipolar awareness. So we're planning that in the new year. No dates confirmed yet, but we are inshallah on it. So that will be happening, and there we get the opportunity to learn a bit more than what we're discussing here today. Obviously, we want to hear from you, but it's very interesting that this is a condition that can't be managed without medication. And I think when there is a danger, as you say, when people are maybe just going through a manic episode, so obviously there's different types, as you've explained. I'm sorry, my screen keeps on doing these funny things at the moment. What I found with people that I work with often is when they're in that manic state, they say, I don't need medication, I'm off it, I'm not going on it. And then you see the deterioration. And not everybody, but for some, then they're having to be sectioned and hospitalized and then put back on things like lithium to regulate the mood before they're able to then go back into the community and live and, settle down and live an active life. And I have seen that quite a lot of times. I'm not generalizing that's everybody, but it's interesting that you say that. And because you are somebody who is personally affected, somebody who has bipolar disorder, I think it's really powerful because it's coming from a place of experience, not somebody where often people with mental health problems, especially people with severe mental health problems and disorders, are constantly feeling like they're being dictated to. So I think it's very powerful, Imran, that you're doing this. It's amazing, mashallah. Okay, so what I wanted to know is, before your diagnosis, did you know that you had any problems?
Looking back after the diagnosis, I can see there were many problems. But at the time, I just thought I was feeling very high or very low. When I was very high, I just thought, people around me would be taking drugs or alcohol or whatever to get high.
Yes.
And I would be feeling higher than them without anything. And I'd enjoyed the state that I was in, not knowing that that was quite a dangerous state to be in. So I would take, do risky things like run projects that weren't really feasible or viable. But at the time, I just thought they were a great idea. So I lost, thousands and in some cases hundreds of thousands of pounds on projects that were just, not really viable. And before that, I think, there's, in terms of relationships, there's always issues there where that something wasn't right. And looking back now, I can see where I've gone wrong because of my bipolar. Even down to childhood, I could see there were issues where I'd miss school, on weeks on end, where I'd pretend I was ill, not knowing that I was actually having a depressive episode, because I didn't know what depression was. So I just thought I was ill, and I'd keep taking days off. And because of that, it affected my school, my learning and everything else. And then that got me into trouble, and then that got me kicked out of my house, and I ended up in youth hostel and things like that.
Sorry, what did you say you ended up in?
In a youth hostel and things like that. And so, and then from there, it was kind of the survival instinct kept kicking in, where you just kind of go into different jobs and different businesses and things like that. So you kind of build up things without realizing that it's actually a mental illness that you have. A few years before being diagnosed, there was times where I was close to, I was, taking my own life and not knowing why, because I had everything that I wanted. I had a small child, I had, everything, my wife and everything else, but you just don't know why you want to end it. And it's normally because when you're high, you say things or do things or behave in ways that you're ashamed of afterwards, and the guilt and everything else starts creeping up, and you just don't know how to deal with it. And so when somebody says, yeah, but why do you feel like killing yourself? It's like, I don't know why, but I know that I feel worthless, and I feel shameful, and I feel embarrassed about things. And at that moment in time, you forget the fact that you've got a wife and children. You forget all of the reasons why you need to live. All you're concentrating on the reasons why you need to go. And so that's what happened. And then just before my diagnosis, I was driving back from Birmingham to Nottingham, And, I felt that it was time for me to give up and give in. And, I kind of let go of the steering wheel on the motorway, and I lifted my arms up thinking that the car could fly. And I was on a high at the same time. And luckily, for some odd reason, I managed to grab the steering wheel and put it to the side of the motorway. And it was at that moment in time that I thought, something's not right. This can't be normal.
Yes.
So I went to see the doctor and I asked for an urgent referral to a psychiatrist. And then I went to see the psychiatrist, and two of them immediately diagnosed me with bipolar. And, and then another one met another psychiatrist, consultant psychiatrist, and she immediately informed DVLA to take my driving license off me. And then I lost my driving license. Then because of that, I lost my company car. Then because of that, I lost my job. Then because of that, my debts spiraled out of control, and everything just went from bad to worse. And I started looking for help, and at the time there wasn't anything that was available. And so I was kind of desperate. And in them 2 years, I was kind of also in denial as well. I was thinking, me, a person that was running businesses and running projects, how can I be somebody with bipolar disorder? How can I be the mad one? How can I be thinking about killing myself? I'm strong. I don't think about stuff like that. I deal with things, and I think that thought of taking my own life was, for me personally, something that I could never talk to anybody about, because it was just shameful. It was embarrassing, and I felt weak. So then afterwards, it's only 2 years later that I came to terms with the illness, and then I thought, what, I've actually got bipolar, and I need to deal with it. And then I started taking my medication properly. I started looking into setting up the Bipolar Lift to deliver all of the services that I was looking for at the time. And that's really how it started. So I fell into Bipolar Lift by accident.
So Imran, going back to diagnosis, how old were you, if you don't mind me asking, when you got diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
I was 43. Okay.
And normally, so go on. Normally, when do people get diagnosed?
Normally they get diagnosed between 16 to 25.
Okay. And when you were talking about being younger, do you think, what was the age you have first memories of having those highs and lows?
At the hostel, at the youth hostel. So I must have been about between 15, 16 years old. It was at that time that I realized that something wasn't right.
So it took how long from 15 to the age of 43 before you were diagnosed, and then another 2 years before you were able to accept? Because obviously it's a huge shock, isn't it, to have a diagnosis like that when you've lived the way you've lived, any kind of condition, but to have bipolar disorder, and then your life completely changed as a result. So it wasn't that it got better because you got a diagnosis, because you then lost a job, and then financial circumstances, you got into debt, you weren't allowed to drive, you lost your independence. It had a massive effect. And obviously, again, then being told by specialists that you have to be on medication, all of these things. So I can imagine, to the shock of your life being completely changed.
I think
awful.
I think for me, the reason I couldn't talk to anybody about it was because from the age of 16 to 43, I was kind of involved in businesses and projects that were reasonably successful. So I was kind of, 1 minute I'll be speaking on stage to thousands of people. Next minute I'll be setting up the Muslim Writers Awards, for example, in 2008 with Jermaine Jackson and people like that. And then I'd be running colleges in Birmingham, and I was a principal of a college, even though I didn't have a qualification myself. So it was lots of those kind of exciting projects and interesting projects I was involved in. So when I was low or high, there's no way I could talk to anybody about this. In fact, to give you an idea, one of my best friends over the last 12, 15 years is a consultant psychiatrist, and he did not pick up on the fact that I had bipolar because I hid it so well, because I would not talk to anybody about it. So when he'd see me on a high, and he'd think, Imran's always like this, Imran's always energetic, and is always on a mission to achieve something. And then I'd disappear. So when I disappear, I'd go home and be ill, and I wouldn't even tell my wife. I'd just say, I'm ill, I've got a headache, I've got migraine, I've got bellyache, I've got anything, any excuse to stay in bed, other than to say I'm actually feeling really, really, really bad and low. and I think I'm just really out of it. You know, I just couldn't say that.
Yeah, and I think because we come from cultures and society where not only generally men don't speak about things like this and when they're struggling, but then the additional barriers coming from the South Asian community, for example, for us, it's huge. So speaking about things not understood, but also then you had a reputation, you had accountability, responsibility. You played multiple roles within the community, but also in the business sector and all of that. I mean, it's amazing how so many people with mental health problems are actually functioning. People forget that. People think that, oh, that means that everybody who has a mental health disorder is not functioning and they're all unable to do anything. But so many of us are actually functioning. But as you say, behind the scenes, there is such a struggle that people don't know about. But I think specifically what's really interesting about what you've said, Imran, about bipolar disorder is the guilt that you feel when you come away from that high and you've done things that perhaps you're not proud of and you feel ashamed of, and that makes you feel like you don't want to live anymore. That's how bad it can get, that link to suicide as a result. And because the type of condition you have, your intent is very much in achieving what you intend to achieve. So I can understand how that can make you so close to, taking your own life, and the fact the stats are out there that, suicide rates in people with bipolar disorder is high. So that, it is a concern, but it's amazing that you've turned it around, but also it is still a challenge for you every single day, I imagine. Am I right, Imran?
Absolutely. I think you feel really bad and you feel guilty and you feel ashamed and everything else. And then you think, I'm going to change. Then, I try my best to try and be a better person. So then I'd upset my wife every 5 minutes, and then I'd apologize again. Then I'd do something else, and then I'd apologize again. And, you get to a point where you start feeling embarrassed and ashamed again, because you start thinking,
it's like
all I'm doing is I'm just apologizing for my bad behavior. So I'm just a bad person.
Yeah.
So, and then you start feeling really low again, because, and then suddenly from a high, you could flip to a low within minutes, and then start feeling really, really bad, because you just think, I'm a man here, I'm the husband, and all I'm doing all day long is apologizing for my behavior.
Yeah. So it's quite a lot of torture there,
It is.
And that circle, like you're on a roundabout and you just can't get off, must be so painful. So I can understand, what I can't understand fully, obviously, but I can empathize, and I can relate to some of it. So what then, during that time when you'd had the diagnosis and you were getting the support, did you have family understand? Did you tell them? Did you tell your family you had this diagnosis?
Yeah, I think the moment I was going to, when I let go of the steering wheel and I thought my car could fly, it was at that point, and that when I had the diagnosis, and that, a day or two later, that I told my wife that I had a bipolar disorder diagnosis, and I think she didn't actually believe me fully. I think she was kind of unsure that, because she was a bit shocked that I had bipolar, because it's something that she wasn't expecting, So when it came to seeing the consultant psychiatrist, and then she said exactly the same thing again. And then when she saw the letters coming in from the psychiatrist saying, he's got bipolar disorder, whatever else, I think it's only then that it dawned on her as well that I do actually have bipolar disorder, because again, I've been hiding it so well from everybody. I've always had this network of friends and family around me. I mean, always, for example, every project that I ran, there was always some kind of a network attached to it. Like, for example, the Muslim Writers Awards had, hundreds and hundreds of writers attached to it. So the college had hundreds and hundreds of students attached to it. So I was always involved with lots of people. So she could not believe that somebody like me has bipolar disorder, because I looked normal, I behaved normal, So when I did have my ups and downs, then she was looking at me like, why are you behaving like this? And not really understanding that it's the illness that's kicking in now, and because I started to be open about it and stopped hiding the fact that, I have bipolar, whereas before I was hiding all the time. And, you know, that was hard work hiding it all the time. And now that I've opened up and said, look, I've got bipolar disorder, and she understood it and accepted it, I could be myself a little bit more. But the danger that came with that was now I was prone to kind of, you know, more attacks in a sense, because I was being more open with her. So
Yeah.
every time I had an episode, she could see it, which meant then I had to apologize more, which then meant, you know, I was getting into more and more trouble because of my behavior, because I wasn't hiding as the way I should. So
Yeah.
sometimes I sit back and I think to myself, you know, maybe I shouldn't have told anybody that I have bipolar. Maybe I should have kept it to myself and just carried on hiding it, because then I would have been apologizing less, because I would, every time something would have happened, I would have disappeared or done something else, or, you know, just, you know, try to cover it, if that makes any sense.
Yes, yes. So although it was benefits and a little bit freeing to talk about the fact that actually I'm going through this, I'm not feeling great, this is what's happening, and I have bipolar disorder, and right now my mood is really low, or whatever, or I'm so sorry that you know, I was so excitable and I want to do all these things, which hindsight wasn't going to be something I could achieve, whatever it was, you know, I'm making this up. So although that it was freeing for you to say, I have bipolar disorder, and look, this is the explanation, the fact that then when something happened as a result, when you were having those dips or those highs, you felt guilty, and then you apologized, and that then made it worse and made you feel, you know, even worse. It didn't make you feel good, because now you're having to apologize, and now you felt bad that you'd inconvenience somebody or trouble somebody or hurt somebody's feelings, whatever it is that was happening. I'm a kind of,
Yeah, absolutely spot on. You feel bad because you're apologizing all the time.
so it's not easy, is it? It's there are benefits to being open, but also there are consequences, as you say, especially for your condition and the way that your condition affects you. So is your which bipolar disorder have you been diagnosed with, Imran?
Bipolar 2, but I have mixed episodes.
Okay.
So I have highs and lows at the same time.
Okay, all right. So that's quite exhausting. Yeah. Okay. So as a result of the diagnosis and telling family, what happened next? Did you find the support you needed besides a psychiatrist?
Yeah, I
Or
think my wife was very supportive afterwards. I think it took both of us time to understand that this is a
yeah,
serious illness. And then I think when I decided to set up Bipolar Lift, she was incredibly supportive, and because of her background as a you know, social worker and everything
yeah,
else, she started to learn more about it. You know, whereas me, on the other hand, was more lived experience. She was actually reading about it and trying to
yeah,
understand it better.
yeah,
So, you know, she started supporting me more, and I think right now she gets it. You know, so when I'm totally out of it, she'll just let me be and just kind of leave me alone, and just, you know,
have your time.
let me deal with it type of thing.
Yeah,
But yeah, and friends and family, I've lost lots and lots of friends, because I just drifted away, you know, because I was
yeah,
embarrassed to say I've got bipolar, and you know, these are business associates, and I didn't want them to think, you know,
yeah,
that they can do work with somebody who's got bipolar now.
yeah,
So I stopped talking because I was embarrassed. So I have you know, a handful of friends now. Even with family, you know, I see them occasionally, not as much as I used to, because they don't understand the illness. So when I'm saying to them sometimes, you know, I can't drive to London today because I'm not feeling too good,
yeah,
you know, they just won't understand the fact that the lithium and the risperidone and the clorazepam and the, you know, sodium valproate that I'm on is going to mess up with my head, and I won't be able to drive today. You know, is difficult for them to understand in our culture, especially.
yes, yes, especially when you are such a functioning person and such an active person, and you know, working at high level as well. So it's really hard for people to understand, how can that person, it doesn't fit for them. But I think it's amazing what you're doing. Now, before we go on to Bipolar Lift, there's I wanted to ask Ismail, first of all, is there anything that you want to ask?
No, thank you. As I said, I was just amazed in what you said regarding the time scale between what you were going through and your diagnosis. That's 20 plus odd years, you know, not just you, but how many other people are out there in the same sort of scenario? I mean, in your case, you had the hindsight to sort of think, actually, there's something wrong here. I need to find out what's so much wrong with me, right?
Yeah, I mean,
okay, and then it took you 20 odd years to get there. I mean, imagine the amount of people who are still out there going through this sort of episodes of up highs and lows, not knowing what actually it is.
Yeah, the thing with bipolar is that it's one of these illnesses that it takes on average 9.5 years to get diagnosis.
Wow.
So somebody could be on antidepressants for many years. I mean, myself,
Misdiagnosis, yeah.
yeah, I was on antidepressants for 6 years before I was diagnosed.
Okay.
So, you know, a lot of people out there that are on antidepressants might be thinking they're just depressed or having the odd episode here and there, could be having bipolar. But the other thing also is that it crosses over many other illnesses as well. Bipolar and borderline personality disorder, for example, there's a lot of crossover there, and schizophrenia as well. You know, schizoaffective disorder and stuff like that. And even the medication is used on all three sometimes. You know, so it's hard to diagnose.
So it's not clear cut, and especially if you like you having mixed episodes and things as well. Not so clear cut. Whereas in with the other type of bipolar, that it's very clear because people have dips and highs, and can go without a dip for a long while, or the manic state, and then some people it's not so extreme, isn't it? It's not so obvious, so that can be a challenge as well. Is there anybody that would like to ask a question? Can you please put it in the chat, and I'm going to go on to speak to Nahida now. Nahida, it's wonderful that you have this social work background as well, because obviously that must have been really helpful, not only with you working with Imran on the organization Bipolar Lift, but also in terms of how your approach to caring and supporting as a professional. You know, even if you haven't got your professional hat on at home, you still come at it very differently to maybe somebody who doesn't have a caring background, doesn't have a social care background. So I imagine that in a way was helpful, although in some ways maybe not. So Nahida, you talk us through how you've kind of been supporting and caring, and maybe even some of the challenges, because that would be interesting.
To begin with, the first challenge I would say is when Imran was first diagnosed, he was in denial. So for a good year, he wouldn't even accept the fact that he had bipolar. So I'm doing all my research, I'm reading up, and I'm thinking, oh, there's that sign, there's that. But he wouldn't accept it, would you? Even when he had the psychoeducation classes, which help, you have a psychiatrist, you have a nurse, and other people who have bipolar, and they would discuss the problem. Imran would go to, I think he ended up going to 2 or 3 sessions. He came home and said, that's not for me, I don't have bipolar, I'm not mad. Absolutely refused point blank to believe he had got bipolar. So that was the first challenge. So that took about a year probably to get over. So in that year, it was reading up and educating myself as well as Imran reading up. And then it's the next challenge is the medication. So you put on one medication, then it might have a side effect with something else. So with Imran, he's actually on lithium, but you have to be careful because you have to have regular blood tests every 3 months, so that you don't have an impact on the kidneys. So we were fine for all these years, but now they're saying that it's having an effect on the kidneys, mild effect, so they're going to reduce the lithium and try a new medication. But every time you try a new medication, there's always a side effects. And the new one that Imran started now is making him really, really lethargic. So where he's been functioning for weeks and weeks on end, up and down at night like a yo-yo, not able to sleep, this new medication is causing him to just sleep, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in the daytime, he'd have to have, before he wouldn't even have one nap, whereas now he's functioning on maybe 7 hours of sleep at night, but still having to have 1 or 2 naps in the day and just not able to concentrate. So the challenges isn't just the bipolar, it's the medication and then the impact it has on the family as well. But we have 2 children and we have a 9-year-old and we have a 19-year-old, so obviously teenager and a young child. So sometimes it's like Imran can be fine with the kids, and sometimes you can't, you know, as 9-year-olds quite demanding and wants attention, and it's like, Dad's not feeling well today, he can't take you out, how about I take you out and now I'll do this with you, but Dad promised he'll be doing this. So it's things like that which have a knock-on effect on the family, because then obviously I have to step in and just say, just go and lie down for half an hour, maybe you'll feel better when you come. So that type of stuff to begin with. But it's the denial. If someone's in denial, they can't be helped, because until they're taking that medication, because obviously bipolar is a condition that can't be cured. It can only be managed through either medication or coping strategies. So you need them coping strategies to do that. And Imran being a man, obviously they don't talk as much, so it's forcing the issue sometimes as well. Or how are you feeling? I'm okay. And you're thinking, well, you're clearly not okay, but how do I, you know, get him to talk sometimes? So the support sessions we do are actually brilliant, because Imran has the lived experience. So although I'm there practically, Imran can then support the other people with bipolar by discussing maybe the medication and maybe coping strategies. So that's really good.
I suppose, Imran, coming from that place of experience, people are able to relate and feel, oh, well, you get it because you're in our shoes. So I think that's really helpful. But Nahida, what you've been sharing is really interesting, because as a carer or a member of the family, you have a role to play in all of this. It also impacts, but also, you know, in terms of day-to-day, what happens. So if that also means what you know, you have to rearrange your routines. If you're working, you know, so do you work?
Yes, I'm working on this project full time. So we have about 170 clients.
Wow.
So I'm like doing the calls, the Zooms, meeting up, doing the PRP. So there's often times where I have to rearrange timetable, because, you know, it's that day I'm not going to be able to get out and do stuff. Say Imran was supposed to go and pick some of the kids up, I would have to rearrange things if he's not feeling well. But we do manage it pretty well, and you know, it's not too bad. But it can be hard work. Let's put it. It is hard work. It's hard work when you have kids anyway, and then to have a husband who needs sometimes that extra help. It'll can be
and I know, you know, as carers, of course we don't mind caring for our loved ones, but I think it's that balance of taking care of yourself as well, to be able to then you know, continue to care for loved ones. Now there's a feature in the chat, so I'm just gonna goodness,
sorry.
So I think Asma's put, Jazakallah for sharing your lived experiences. You are still on this journey with the support of your wonderful wife. I don't know whether you have mentioned it already, but is bipolar a genetic, hereditary mental illness? No, we haven't. So that's a good point, Asma.
I think it's a very important point. I think there's a number of factors that can trigger a bipolar episode. And that could be social, environmental, you know, it could even be physical health as well as mental health. But also in terms of the statistics, if you're a parent and you have a child and the parent has got bipolar disorder, the child is 10 times likely, or there's a 10% chance rather of the child having bipolar disorder. So there's a genetic, you know, hereditary passover that can take place with bipolar disorder, and it's the only mental illness that can actually do that. So you know, if both parents have got bipolar, then there's a higher chance of the child having bipolar disorder too.
Interesting, very interesting. So Nahida, when Imran got diagnosed, were you working elsewhere at that time?
Yeah, I was working for the Nottingham County Council. I was an adult social worker, adult team.
So then you had to give up to care for Imran?
I didn't have to give up because I was working school hours, so we kind of worked it around Imran. So I didn't give up. No.
Well, that's good. That's good. Good to know as well that Imran was able to manage as well. Because I think for you, Imran, as well, that must have been like, oh, okay, what can I do myself, without having to have support all the while? Because I think your independence,
Absolutely.
especially somebody like you who has been in senior positions and responsible for so many people, all of that lifestyle to just go. And then to, I think leave a big hole in a sense. So that must
Absolutely.
be,
Absolutely. I mean, even now, I mean, like, even though I've accepted I've got bipolar disorder and I'm on medication and everything else, every few weeks, there's a point where I sit back and I think to myself, do you know what? I'm going to stop taking this medication. I don't have bipolar disorder. I'm going to feel much better if I'm off the medication. And I'll do this every few months. And even this morning, I was driving, my wife was driving to Sainsbury's, and I had to put the disabled badge on the dashboard. And I looked at the disabled badge and I thought to myself, me being disabled, it's not me. This can't be mine. And it dawned on me that I was disabled, and I had to put this on the dashboard. And I was thinking, I've got to do this. I've got to do something about this. I've got to come off the medication or stop being bipolar. Because you're right. Having done so many things in the past, you just feel you get to a stage where you think to yourself, I do not have bipolar. I cannot be mentally ill. I cannot be. Do you see what I mean? It's one of those things.
So when you you mentioned, Nida, about Imran not being able to accept it for a year that he had a bipolar diagnosis. So I just wanted to say, in terms of anybody who is supporting somebody with a mental health problem, not necessarily bipolar, frustration for people supporting and for carers is that our hands are tied, because until that person admits they have a problem, and then until that person wants to get help, that all we can do is be supportive and be kind and compassionate.
You have to be patient. You have to be as patient as possible, because you can't be harsh with it, because then it's going to make the situation worse. I think the hardest part for Imran also was when he was diagnosed, his license was taken off him. So then I had to drive him around, and he hates my driving at the best of times. It was awful. It was like, I need to go here, and I'm like, well, obviously I'm going to have to take you, so you'll have to. And then it would start rearranging things. So, okay, we'll go out where you need to go whilst the kids are at school, or even if someone can sit with the kids. So that was really, really tough, because he's not used to that. He's used to getting in the car and just going and doing it. So it's almost like he's relying totally then on me to take him out and about. That was really difficult.
Yeah, and my mood switched, because I'd get very angry very quickly, because I was kind of frustrated with myself. I was thinking, here I am now, relying on somebody else to sort out my medication, to drive me around, and I didn't have a job. I was in debt of, I think I had debts of nearly £200,000. I was thinking, how on earth am I going to pay this? And no one's going to give me a job now because I've got bipolar. So everything was just kind of, I was angry at myself, but I was taking it out on people around me.
And I think at that point, when he decided that he had no choice but to start on certain medication, that's what stabilized his mood. That's when you were put on mood stabilizers. And that's what really helped. That's why it's so important to have your medication and discuss and regularly reviewed.
That's really good.
Really
good answer. And I think this is it, isn't it? And having somebody in your corner during that time. I mean, I know it's frustrating for people who are supporting sometimes, but I think, as you say, if you imagine you are the one with a mental health disorder, if all your choices were taken away, how would you feel? So I think it's very important, Nida, your advice about being patient with that person. Of course, if the person is at risk, then it's a different story. We're talking about, this is day to day.
You still have a duty of care, whether it's your husband or whether it's anybody. So that will always be at the back of my mind. So if it was dangerous, then obviously that's where I would seek help. I mean, I've rang Imran's psychiatrist many times, to say, this is what's happening, could you please advise us? And
Yes.
maybe you need to alter the medication, or could you ring Imran and discuss it? There's no harm in doing that. I mean, often they won't talk to you, but you can ring them and tell them your concerns. Whether they're able to tell it, they won't give you any information about Imran or anything like that, but your concerns are then noted, and they then have a duty of care to call the client. So I always say to a carer, if you're worried, ring the GP or the psychiatrist, especially the psychiatrist's secretary if you can't get through, and just leave your concerns with them and leave your number. Somebody will always get back to you, or ring the client directly. By doing that, you've explained what's happening, and then hopefully somebody will pick that up and take it on board.
That's really good advice, Nahida. Thank you so much for that. That's really helpful. Imran, we've got another question for you. Do you want to read that one out?
Yeah, it just says, when you assessed for your drive and when your driving license was revoked, was that
Were you reassessed?
Well, you reassessed, and are you able to drive now, or are you still not?
Yeah. What happened was they took it away for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And then they wanted a letter from my psychiatrist to say that I was stable. And then they gave me a license back for 1 year, which had to be renewed again after 12 months. And they wanted a letter from the psychiatrist again to say that I was stable and I was on level grounds and everything else. And then they gave me the license back for 2 years. Then I had to send off another letter from the psychiatrist, and then they finally gave me one for 10 years now. So I'm on a 10-year license, alhamdulillah. You know, so
So at least you're mobile again now, which is really good to hear.
I'm good to go. Yeah.
Look at that smile. The smile is cool.
But just to point something out, I think now looking back, it was very important that Imran's license was revoked at that time, because looking back, he was not safe to drive. So although he may have thought, oh my God, my license been taken, he wasn't well enough to drive, and had something happened, he wouldn't have forgiven himself for that. So the psychiatrist was totally right at that time to take the license. But it's reassessed and you're driving again, so that's good.
Wonderful. Okay, so before I start the next part, we've got 15 minutes left to the end of our session. I want to use that time to focus on why you set up Bipolar Lift. But before I do, I want to ask, if anybody has a question, can you please put it in the chat and we'll address it, please. Thank you. Okay, so Imran, tell me more about Bipolar Lift and what made you start it up.
Okay, it was purely by chance and by accident. There was no business plan. There was no planning that went into any of this stuff. So if anybody asks me, I'm going to lie and just tell them that I've planned it and things have gone well in that respect. But I mean, the thing is, if I hadn't been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, then there would be no Bipolar Lift. And if I was able to find help, then there wouldn't be no Bipolar Lift. The thing is that there was no help available, and I was desperate for help. And I thought to myself, there must be other people that are in the same situation that need help too. And then I made a note of everything that I needed help with. And I needed help with my debt situation. I needed to get my driving license back. I needed support with friends and family. I needed to meet new people that have got bipolar as well. I needed to speak to somebody who understood my illness. I needed to learn more about the illness. You know, all of these things I needed to do. So I set up the Bipolar Lift to deliver and provide all of those things, and not just for people with bipolar, but their friends and family, because they get affected the most in some cases. You know, so we wrote a booklet. I don't know if you can see that. It's called the Bipolar Lift. I wrote this in a few days. I was on a high at the time when I wrote it. But it's been checked over by a consultant psychiatrist, so it's all good. But you know, we've provided resources to people to kind of help one another out and things like that. We've created a course for employers to kind of teach their staff about bipolar disorder. So anything to do with bipolar disorder, we're pushing it wherever we can. Anything else, other mental health illnesses and things like that, we're referring on to other organizations. Like yourself, we're going to be passing people on to yourself for other things, and we purely focus on bipolar because we understand bipolar, and that's it. In terms of where we are, I don't know how, by the grace of God, we've been growing at 100% rate every year. You know, year on year, we've been growing 100%. We've got Nida who's on a full-time salary from this as well now, and I'm applying for a salary for myself.
Good.
We're getting we're partnering. We've partnered with Trent University in Nottingham. We've partnered with the University of Nottingham as well. We're doing research projects that are about to start. We've got a mobile app that's about to be launched in next year. It's currently in prototype mode at the moment. So, you know, we've got lots of things in the pipeline that are going to be, hopefully, inshallah, helping lots of people with bipolar disorder in ways that have never been helped before. So we're kind of pioneering different things. You know, so like the one-to-one supports, I mean, they can, you know, just by talking to somebody can make a huge difference. You know, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I sit with people, and when they leave, they'll say something like, you know what, I was in a bad place and I was about to do something very stupid, and now I'm all right. I mean, yesterday I was talking to a father of a daughter who's got bipolar disorder, and you know, the father is now depressed and suicidal because his daughter has got bipolar disorder, and she's off the rails and she's doing some crazy stuff, and you know, he feels responsible because he's the father, and you know, he's crying away, and you know, just that 1 hour of talking to the father made all the difference. You know, that support, and then giving him links and, you know, telling him, look, I'm on the other end of the phone for you, you know, is really important. And inviting him along to the group sessions where you can meet other people with bipolar disorder, so you can learn more about it and deal with his own daughter's illness better, you know. So these are the kind of things that we do. I mean, we do pretty much anything, and I know it sounds very cliche, and you know, but anything to do with bipolar, we do it. We get people that need help with their CVs, for example. They're not sure whether they should put bipolar on the job application form, you know, for example. So we advise them on ACAS rules and things like that, you know, and we help them with CVs, workshops, confidence building, anything that person has lost because of bipolar, we try and bring it back. You know, we look at solutions-focused therapy in the kind of truest meaning of it.
And this book that Imran wrote, it's really good because
and it's downloadable for free, by the way.
on our website you can actually download it for free.
Imran, can you put it in the chat, the website?
Yeah. And the good thing about this is it's quite simple terms, so you can understand bipolar, because there's lots of different types of bipolar, and it tells you all things about medication, about anything. So that's a great booklet for families who don't know much about bipolar, just to educate themselves. So like we say, it's downloadable, and at least this way, there's the triggers, there's so much information in this. And when a person goes to a psychiatrist, they might go in for about a 10-minute appointment, then they're out of there. Whereas we can sit and speak to, I mean, I was on the phone earlier on for a good 40 minutes to a new client, and we're getting a lot of clients from your end of the woods. We're getting a lot of Leicester clients.
Well, we've been sharing. We have been sharing, but I think it's brilliant to hear that you're able to support more people. And I think the more people know about your services, the more, and you know how it is, word of mouth in the community is really important. Who's sharing what, where the information is coming from. If it's coming from a trusted source to them, then it makes that difference, isn't it? So it's really,
and in Nottingham, probably you have something similar in Leicester. We have like a carers hub, so we can actually refer people on. So because it is something that it's not just the person with bipolar, it affects the family, the friends, so they can actually get that support they need as well. So we've got a really good connections in Nottingham, and we can signpost people. So that's another thing. If we're not able to do specific work with them, say, for example, counselling, we can then refer them on to the right place.
And it is that partnership working, because you know, one organization can't be,
you can't do
everything for everybody and do everything, and it is that you're utilizing all the services that are out there, all the resources that are out there to get the best for the people that we support. So Imran, there was a question, I think you have answered it.
He's answered that,
but I wanted to ask Madiha if she was happy with that answer, or was there anything specific support wise that she was interested in. So she's just put, what kind of support do you provide for your clients? I know you have said, but let's just make sure that she's happy with that.
Anything that's that will help them on a mental well-being, social well-being, environmental well-being, you know, anything that they find a gap or a hole that they need filling, we fill that hole.
And and also I've actually just completed my level 2 counselling. So although I'm a social worker, I've done part of the counselling, so now I'll do the next one, because this is counselling on a daily basis, but I will refer to a counsellor. I'm not there to counsel people. But it's very important to always be on top of your, you need to be aware of all the changes, the safeguarding issues and all of that. So we're learning all the time. We're doing courses all the time. So not to give the wrong advice, but like I say, our course can last from 10 minutes to an hour, 2 hours. So
it's really important you have up-to-date skills and you're getting the necessary support in order for you to provide support.
And luckily, and luckily I still have friends in the mental health profession and social workers, so I can draw on information. If I'm not sure, I can say I will get back to you, and then go out there and, do you know what I mean, get the appropriate right information.
I think that support for yourselves working in this kind of field where it is very much a giving situation, and it is emotionally draining. Keeping yourself investing in yourself and your care is really important for you, Imran, with your own mental health, with having bipolar, which is such a day-to-day challenge. You've just described some of those challenges to us. You've spoken about how medication impacts as well, and then having being CEO of this organization where lots of people are in need, that is all challenging, isn't it? So to manage your well-being is really important. And Nahida, same for you, because you're a carer as well as, you know, working full-time on this, and you have a family. So it's being mindful when we're giving, and it's the same for me. I constantly having to remind myself that I've got to take care of myself as well, because otherwise it has a ripple effect, everything, and you're unable to support. Madiha is happy with how you answered that. What I want to know is, when did you actually set up Bipolar Lift? So how long have you been running?
Like, we've been running since 2019. So in January it'll be 4 years.
Mashallah.
So January will be 4 years now.
And you've achieved a heck of a lot in that small amount of time. So, you know, you using your confidence and all those skills that you had from your previous careers and experiences and your professional expertise, you basically, all those transferable skills, you've taken them with you. And you've invested in Bipolar Lift so that other people, families and individuals affected by bipolar disorder are able to benefit from your knowledge. And then you've done the same by educating yourself about your own condition, and then being brave enough to share. Because what made you want to be open and share with everybody that I've got bipolar disorder? Because as you say, you know, with that comes its challenges as well, being open about your mental illness.
I think with Bipolar Lift, it's not a business. It's not a project. In fact, it's a project of passion. As opposed to anything else. It genuinely is about helping as many people as we possibly can. And, you know, in order to do that, I have to take the hat off and say, actually, I'm one of you guys myself. You know, and I think if I didn't do that, then I wouldn't have the credibility to be talking about the Bipolar Lift and what we deliver and the services we provide. So I had to be open and honest if I expect them to be open and honest with me, you know. And I think that two-way arrangement works, and it's all about you know, making sure that the project remains a project of passion as opposed to a business. And I think that's the reason why we've been growing so well, because I think people can see that and they want to be part of it. There's something magnetic about Bipolar Lift. You know, people with bipolar seem to be attracted to it.
The fact that you have that, you can pick up the phone. I mean, remember we had phone calls at 6 o'clock in the morning. We were like, okay, we will text you in an hour. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But it's knowing that there's somebody there at the end of the phone who will help you. And because we've got to know our clients over these years, we've been through that experience with them, haven't we? I mean, some of them we've known for 2 years, some of them we've known for 1 year, some have been there right at the beginning, and we've seen how much we've helped them out. And I think that's so important.
That's amazing. And I mean, I think we're in a very similar situation. I had I had a similar call this morning, text this morning at 7:30.
Yeah.
And then I had to do the same. I had to say, please, could you wait half an hour and I will give you a call back, because I knew that this kind of message was not somebody I could leave for the rest of the day. But it's be mindful that because of the type of work we're doing, that, you know, those boundaries sometimes thingy. Now there's a question. So Imran, this is for you. Also, if there's any questions for Nahida, please do put them in the chat. How would you advise on mood swings and anger management for someone suffering with bipolar?
Do you know what? I think I'm probably the wrong person to ask that question to, because when I'm having a very quick switch from high to low, or low to high, that's when my mood is all over the place. And that's when I'm not very articulate. I'm not very able to communicate myself properly. And it's at that point I start feeling very irritable and very, I start getting annoyed at myself. And that's when that annoyance turns into anger. The only way you can manage it is basically to go away and just sit somewhere alone for a bit. But when you're angry, you tend not to do that. You want to, you know, vent it out on somebody. So I think you should answer that.
Yeah, I think one thing would be really important is if they had a person that was living with them, partner or a carer, to see if there's been a dramatic change, if there's a reason for the change. Why has this suddenly happened? Because it could be for a certain reason. So it might be important for them to contact the CPN, the community psychiatric nurse, or the psychiatrist to say, look, this is what's happening. I need an appointment with the psychiatrist to discuss it. Maybe they need their medication altering. So it might just be a slight hiccup in the medication that might need to be changed, or maybe they need to go on to, you know, a different medication. So we would always say to someone like that, go back to your psychiatrist and make an appointment, because we're not medically trained, so we're not able to give advice like that. So I would say back to the GP or back to the CPN or the psychiatrist.
If it's,
So in terms of, yeah, go on, Imran.
If it's just you know, a one-off angry episode, then it could just be something that's triggered something off. But if it's a constant state of anger, then yeah, it could be medication.
Or it could be a past trauma not dealt with. So they might need to go back and have that trauma looked at. They might need a period of counselling or something, but it's a psychiatrist or a CPN who would really need to, they need to speak to that.
And in terms of anything practical they can do to manage anger or anything like that?
Take a walk. They can take a walk. They can take a nap. You know, I think normally what they say is take, you know, breathing exercises, listen to some gentle music or something. In our case, you know, go and pray or something.
I would say, in our case, pray or do some like duas, not like main like duas. But the other thing I would say is, are they eating? Are they have they had their food properly? Have they been drinking? Are they sleeping? Because the first trigger would be if their sleeping patterns are affected, if they're not sleeping as much as they should. So that's a must. And also,
so sorry, Nahida, I don't mean to interrupt. Go on, carry on.
Yeah, no, I was saying that the main things they need to look at for that, because maybe it's because they haven't slept much that night. That's why they got the issue the following day, which is normal. Some days Imran will be up and down like a yo-yo, eating sandwiches at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then the following morning, I'll say, you haven't slept. You need to go and lie down for at least an hour. And even if you'll say, oh, but I'm not tired, I said, well, just try. If you can't, come back down, but at least just go away and rest, try and take it from there. But I know when Imran's having problems, it's normally because he hasn't slept properly the night before.
So Nahida, that's really good that you look out for him. But Imran, I'm going to ask you this, and I know we're over, so I am going to finish now with two things. So first of all, in terms of how much awareness do you have when things are spiraling out of control, that you're able to see and make the links and know that you're needing help, or is it Nahida that is able to pick up on that?
I think now, after many years, I think I can feel myself going into one. Okay. So when I know I'm about to go high or low or something, I can feel it. Okay. And sometimes I say to Nahida, you know what, I think I'm about to go high or about to go low. So yeah, I can do it myself now.
To a limit.
To a limit. Yeah.
I love it. You know what, we have you know, we're really honored that you have come on and shared your experiences. Both of you been really open and honest, and I'm sure, you know, everybody else here listening has really benefited, and I feel like we need a part 2 at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
What I'm going to say is, everybody who has been listening, some of you joined a bit later, we are going to be working with Imran and Nahida, and we are going to be delivering a bipolar workshop, mental health awareness and bipolar awareness workshop in the city very soon, in the new year, inshallah. So watch out for that. And hopefully we'll be doing some other work as well. I want to just end on something wonderful that I noticed on LinkedIn. Imran, you won an award.
Oh, we
Tell us
did.
about that.
Get that one correct.
Oh, yes, we did.
Yeah, it was for the Wellbeing Award at the Rushcliffe Awards in Nottingham. Yeah, so yeah, we weren't expecting it. We were
One
very
of our
pleased.
clients actually nominated us.
Oh.
We weren't expecting to win, actually. We've never been to something like this before, but it was lovely that she actually nominated us, you know, and she, believe it or not, was my very first client when we started.
Oh, how amazing is
So
that?
it's just like cliche first, and then we won. So
Yeah,
that was really,
yeah.
really good.
So huge congratulations from us,
Thank
mashallah.
you.
And may they be the beginning of many more. And we look forward to working with you. There's some thank you from Asma to Imran and Nadia
Oh,
as
thank
well,
you.
for a very informative session. Just lots of duas and good wishes to all of you. And we will be holding our next men's mental health focus session in January, date to be confirmed. Watch this space. We're on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and also our website, which we put up there. Layla's also said thank you, everyone. So I think everybody's really grateful, and hopefully we will be talking about this topic more again in the future.
Yeah,
so inshallah, everyone take care. Take care during the festive period and the holidays. Enjoy them, and have a good new year. Inshallah, we'll see you all soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.